Hey there, everybody. Welcome to a live edition of the Because Cannabis podcast. Brand new episodes every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Every Thursday with video on Spotify and anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Those of you listening live right now, we want to get your comments. Let's get that right out the gate. We got guests with us, Tim Johnson from Cannabis Safety First. Tim Johnson putting his feet to the floor in the Ohio Congressional Senate or Congress or whatever those fancy law-educated people call it. He's down there writing bills, pushing policies, that man. And we're excited to have Tim Johnson with us today to talk through some of those things. This is the Because Cannabis podcast brought to you by Wayward Media. I am B.C. Wehman. That is Dustin Kava.
Hi,
Dustin,
guys.
you ready to live it up?
Yes.
Yes, we are. We are going to be talking Ohio legal cannabis right now. We voted. You, us, 57% of the OHIONs on November 7th, 2023. We all went to the ballot. We pushed our pencils, filled in the dot completely. Have you ever gone anarchist, Dustin, and just said, you know what? I'm going to go outside this bubble, Mr. Voting Man. What are you going to do about it if I go outside the lines? Have you ever gone rebel with a voting cause and colored outside the lines in that little voting ballot thing?
No, I haven't. I'm
such a square.
I am
such a square. You would not think that Dustin Kava would be so adhering to all the rules and regulations because there's so many of them, especially in the legalized cannabis industry. And so we're excited to talk that today. That's what we're going to be doing. We voted. Since then, shrug emoji. Right? Things happening. We are operating right now in the state of Ohio as a legal cannabis state. Whatever issue 2 said, all the things that it laid out, that is the current rules that we live in. But there's one daunting question, Dustin Kava, that I need to have answered. And what is that?
I don't know.
When can I buy the weed? That's what I want to have answered. That's what everybody wants to have answered. There's a lot of who's and how's and what can we possess. I get all that. But there is only one question that everyone wants to have answered right now. And so we're going to bring him on stage right now. Let's bring our guest to the show, Tim Johnson, Cannabis Safety First. Looking dapper. How you doing today, Timothy?
Doing well, guys. Glad to be here.
It is exciting to have you back. It's been about 60 days or so since we last conversed, since we last connected on cannabis here in Ohio. And we are back again. Guess who's back again? The Because Cannabis podcast with Tim Johnson is the answer to that lyrical wax I just dropped upon you. We're here to talk Ohio legal cannabis, and I'm super excited. Got Dustin Kava with me, got Tim Johnson. Let's just kind of start real quick, Tim, with maybe talking a little bit about what has happened since we last left. So what happened? We voted. We know that kind of Congress took a halt, and we're going to talk some specific details in just a moment. But what's happening right now? Like just in a general, let's not go specific, big picture overview, like what's happening in Ohio legal cannabis?
I'll put it in a nutshell. Everything's for the betterment of what we actually voted for. We've demanded that we get what we voted for and that the legislative body or the Division of Cannabis Control not alter it. So what we're looking at is November 7th, we passed it. December 7th, it became a law. March 7th, with this passed, it must have been under the rules must be under the process of being promulgated, which they are. June 7th, which is going to be coming up, that's when the hybrid license requiring all facilities that are going to participate in the adult program, which I'm sure that'll be 100%. You'll have to have not just your medical license that you have, but you'll have the hybrid license, which will be the medical and the adult choice license. That gets issued. The application gets issued then on June 7th to all those companies. They have until September 7th to have them returned and back to the Division of Cannabis Control, and hopefully the dispensaries and everybody hopefully will have themselves together so that on September 7th or therefore immediately after, we'll be able to participate in purchasing adult choice when we go into a dispensary in Ohio.
So is there any chance of sales before September 7th? Is there any chance at all?
Well, there's always a chance for this or that. It could, if one of the license holders would get their application completed in a couple of weeks and get it back, and the DCC decides to go ahead and process that and say, okay, they do their inspection to make sure that the POS system and the tax bases and all that stuff set up correctly, they can go ahead and issue them a certificate to operate under a hybrid license, and they can start, selling to 21 and over. The catch to that is that cultivators and processors will, and testing facilities that they use will also have to have their hybrid license as well. So that, so to say, we know that the flower is flower, and we know it's a medical program in Ohio. It's going to be the same flower as an adult, but under the law, for a dispensary to have adult cannabis, they're going to have purchased it from an adult cultivator or processor, hybrid license. So then, but yeah, there's a possibility. I'm not hopeful on that one, but it would be really nice.
For me, the last couple weeks, I felt so confused by everything going on. I'd read one article that says one thing, and the day later, I'll read something else that starts saying, something totally different. I'm curious as to what is some of the misinformation going out, and what's actually true.
Some of the misinformation that's going out. A lot of it is gray area language, such as the 2.5 ounce possession. Does that mean when I'm out in the public, or does that have to do with my 6 plants I'm cultivating in the home? Well, anybody with common sense in the cannabis industry, we know that our plants are going to have 6 plants are going to have more than 2.5 ounces. So, with the assumption is that 2.5 ounces is possession when you're out and about in the community, same as the 15 grams of concentrates. Some of the other stuff is the misinformation we're seeing is, when can we buy it? Who's going to have it? Who's not going to have it? The licensing under the social equity, that's a big one. Who's going to be able to get those? How soon can we get them? And so on. So those are some of the misinformation. And I think a lot of it just comes from national media organizations that contact, their contacts, whoever they may be in Ohio, that may not have the full, full bowl of information to provide to that media source. So each one of them has a little something different that they provide, but it's getting the word out there. But I think a lot of it is just off of social media, backseat cannabis attorneys trying to interpret the law.
Well, that's why they come here to the Because Cannabis podcast, because we got straight dope facts. That was a good pun, I think. Speaking of, come on, no one laughing. You're laughing right now. We're talking Ohio legal cannabis. We're getting the straight facts from the dopest dude in the business, Tim Johnson. My name's B.C. Wehman. That's Dustin Kava. We're here on the Because Cannabis podcast from Wayward Media. So let's take a look, Tim. So we got a few things I want to cover today. So let's specifically start out with the feedback, especially from licensees, that the Division of Cannabis Control, the DCC, which, by the way, last time we were live, I tried to put myself as the overlord of the DCC. That was soundly rejected, unfortunately. I don't know why. I think I would have been rad at the job, but hey, those are the breaks, as they say in the biz. So what is happening now is the Division of Cannabis Control is starting to slow roll out some facts and information, kind of a preview of what they are. And in doing so, they're emailing licensee holders. This information is also available on the Division of Cannabis Control website for you to click and link and comment on some of these. Some of these have already expired. So I want to talk through some of these languages that are in here one by one, and then we'll hit some of these high points, and this will cover some of what I think the people are talking about. And so we'll start there. Some of the most recent news started March 4th of this year, and eventually is probably going to get better. But starting with 3796 here, we talk about caregiver fees. There has been a push, and it has now happened, to decrease the fee of the medical marijuana patients. They wanted to lower, remove the fee of 50, remove the fee of 25 that the caregivers pay, and encouraging. Right. And this is clearly in a program that's bleeding patients right now. The goal of the DCC is to, encourage more patients to say. So, Tim, thinking of that, we know that now Ohio has a rule of a penny, which I'm curious why it's a penny. And then will that go away? So they did lower the fee. This came true. It is a penny. Let's talk about why a penny. And then is that penny going to go away at some point?
This is an opportunity that Division of Cannabis Control, and I got to give Jim Canepa, the new director, kudos on addressing some of the simple things. And I know we'll probably get to it later that actually were in Senate Bill 9 last year, such as reducing the fees for patients. Also, real quick, the $25 for indigent and for veterans fee, that will be implemented in there as well, even though they don't have it. I made sure when I responded that they also covered that and changing the language. But this is a move to stop financially punishing the patients for being a patient, such as the exorbitant doctor fees that started out in the beginning $500, $800 for a visit. Now we see them down to less than $60.
I paid over $3 for mine when I
exactly. Well, I heard of an elderly lady that paid over $1,800. So those are just cases of unethical doctors taking advantage of the scene at the time. As I said, we're down low, typically under $60. There's a couple of organizations that even do them for free.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of places. If you're paying more, Groupon, folks, Groupon has medical cards for $50 right now. So if you're paying more than $50 for your medical card recommendation from a doctor, no hurt to you doctors that are charging $1,800, but you're doing it wrong. You should have less than $60 pretty much anywhere right now with a quick stroke of the keyboard in Google.
Yeah. So this is a good thing for the patients and for the program. And it is to kind of retain those patients in the medical program rather than lose them to the adult choice program. The 1 penny thing that's still on there was the response I got back from DCC was that it was an IT clerical error and that they will be able to go in there in time and redact that penny and clear it out. So as far as becoming a patient, you'll get your CTR recommendation. You won't have to go through the Board of Pharmacy anymore, and it will go through DCC. They'll control all that. So it's a step forward for us in that arena.
Does it eventually get removed? When do we think we get the penny gone?
I'm going to say it shouldn't be long. It should be, anytime they should be, their IT people should have learned how to, I guess, redact that penny. It'll just be a new application where when you sign up, there won't be a cost to it, is what will happen. So it's a good thing. As I said, it's happening. And, a lot of the patients are happy. There have been some people realize this. If you have a medical card now and it doesn't expire until sometime throughout this year, you don't have to renew it now. Wait until the expiration date of your card right now and then renew it for the penny or for hopefully nothing. And I can tell you the reason they want to get rid of that penny as quick as they can, because even the credit card processing companies and so forth charge more money to process.
We just talked about this, me and BC. Yes, was that Visa or whoever was actually running the processing, it was probably charging them 15 cents, 30 cents on the transaction, and they consider it high risk even at a state level.
Feels like we're kind of screwing Ohio, though, right? Like, take that, Ohio, get that $3 charge.
I don't know. I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of medical patients, just the sheer access to a bank account is not always an easy thing. We take it for granted so often, and it's like there is a large percentage of the population that just doesn't have a debit card, doesn't have a bank account for various reasons, and that zero fee just stops that whole notion of I need one extra step of verification that I have to go through. It's already been difficult and costly.
Exactly. It does.
All right. So we got a few other rules there in this last one they sent out. They were trying to throw this quick section here, basically in a nutshell, trying to throw processor only in Ohio, which there are 14, I believe, processor onlys in Ohio, throw them a bone by cutting the renewal fee in half for processors from $100,000 to $50,000 in hopes to kind of, help processors out. We're going to learn soon, spoiler alert, that maybe they didn't get all that help. But the fee, do you think that's a big deal? Does that excite processors? Are they just rolling their eyes? What's the feedback on this particular action item?
That as well is very exciting to see the open-mindedness of this DCC to look ahead for, as you said, and I think you're right on the 14 processors that are standalones. They don't have cultivation.
No vertical integration, yeah.
Yeah, so they're kind of out there. And so it's a good thing for them. It does apply to all processors, to my understanding, unless they change that somewhere down the line. but it is a good thing. It's kind of similar to, and I hope they address this. I know it's been a hot topic for them, and we keep addressing it. And I think I got my figures right here. For a pharmacy in Ohio with big pharma drugs in it, it costs them $800 a year to renew for a license. Mm-hmm. I believe still in the medical program for a dispensary to renew, I believe it's still $80,000 a year. So we're still trying to figure out.
That pharmacy don't have the dank, am I right?
Well, they don't, even though one of the original senators wanted it in his dispensary, but no, or in his pharmacy, I should say, but no, he didn't get his way. Yeah, I mean, price gouging is what they've done. And I think a lot of that leads back to the Board of Pharmacy and the creation of our program as a whole. They went a little overboard. They've literally got millions of dollars sitting in an account, the cannabis account, that they're still trying to figure out what to do with it. So.
Speaking of what to do with, here's the final point of this memorandum. The comment time is over on this particular one, but I thought this was a really good one, Tim and Dustin. I'm not sure if you've read through this. So basically, it can be hard. It's hard hiring. If you've been to several dispensaries right now, you know that there are sometimes when there's not a lot of staff working right in that area. And so they're trying to make it easier to get staff. And so in order to work in a plant touching business, you have to be badged by the state. You have to pass an FBI and a BCI background check, usually at your own expense. Sometimes you can be reimbursed. Then the state has to file your badge. You have to get approval for that. There's a process to be had to get an employee, and you're desperate for people, and you want to have people so you can serve your patients and assuredly the adult use base that's coming. So they try to make it easier basically by saying, look, you can hire someone on a basis of, we assume they're going to pass all these things once done, and then it'll help us streamline the hiring process. Have you heard feedback from, especially dispensaries, and I would think cultivators who have a lot of entry-level trimming, bud tending, PCR type jobs? Is this something they're excited about?
Exactly, they are. And again, kudos to the DCC. Another step they took forward. It's really all about adult choice at this point in time. But touching on these medical program rules, changing them again, it emphasizes the importance of maintaining that medical program and the retention of patients staying in it. So by allowing employees to have a temporary okay check as far as a background check until it officially goes through BCI and FBI, whoever they go to have it processed. And typically those can be done pretty fast. But it allows employers to hire people temporarily, waiting for that actual background check to come in. And then you get your official ID from the state. So you've got people in there working. You're not having to wait because that's been a problem, for some people to work. It's like, well, wait a minute, I might not get hired for 6 to 8 weeks. I have to have a job now.
Yeah, and you could go right down the road and get a pretty similar job, maybe not in the ideal industry, but yeah, they had to. Right. That process doesn't exist to work at any other industry. In some ways, I get it, but they needed to streamline it to make it faster. So having this kind of provisional ruling that you could bring someone in, that has to help, you would think.
Yeah. We actually have a question from a listener, Todd Austin, who's asking if there's anything new about home grow that we need to know.
6 plants for 1, 12 plants for 2. Have at it.
Any plans of that changing? Are they going to take any of that away? Is there any rules on that I don't know about indoor, outdoor grow, neighbor smells, having to control that? Is
needing to be locked in a specific way?
You gotta have a fence. Like I gotta have a fence to have a pool. Do I gotta have that if I want to grow some weed in the backyard? How's that? How have you heard? Are municipalities? I know they're banning that. Has that come up at all? I just saw Strongsville and a lot of vills in Ohio right now. A lot of people that end in ville are thumbing their nose up at the Brecksville and Strongsville, thumbing their nose. Not you, Painesville. Shout out to Painesville. You got the vills. Some of them are thumbing their nose at that. So that kind of aspect. Are we seeing that kind of battle happening with people growing, with municipalities fighting back, neighbor complaints? Maury Povich issues. Anything happening right now with that?
Personal cultivation.
Next door. There's someone right now, someone's next door, probably Todd Austin's next door neighbor is on nextdoor.com, just ripping on this dude next door, this stoner growing weed right now. Next door. You're gossipy folks.
Todd's a good guy. I know Todd. it's
I'd say it wasn't good. I'm just saying
personal cultivation stands as what we voted on at this time. 6 plants for an adult, 12 plants for 2 adults. It does have to be secured in the home, which means the front door of your house, back door of your house, whatever. How many doors you got have locks on them. Common sense to keep it up and out of reach of the children. We understand the very low possibility of a child being harmed by it, but it's still, appeasing and pleasing, I guess, to the political agenda in the state and so forth. That we practice, responsible parenting practices. As far as outside, it calls for a facility. It has to be in a facility or outside of a facility that is secured. To my interpretation of how it works. So the question is, as a person walks down a sidewalk, can they see over your fence? Well, if they walk up to it and look over, they breach it, that don't count. So you got to keep your plants. If, build an 8-foot fence, grow a 7-foot plant. But that too has to be around the entire property, and it has to be locked. Common sense again would be to, put a security camera on it. They're not that expensive. Buy some at, one of the local retail stores and put it on there. But that's not going to change. I will say this, from the testimonies that came in December and January, or November, December, I believe, to the finance committee. Don't count it out that we might be permitted to grow more plants at home, for the mere fact that a lot of the legislators, they're under the belief that all we do is grow this stuff and smoke it.
Yeah. No.
A few of us do. Anyways,
I hope we do. Right now,
here's what we had to explain to them. We had to explain to them that in some cases, an individual may be manufacturing at home, which is now permitted with, I think it's butane gas or something you're not allowed to use.
Yeah.
There's one of the things you're not allowed to use.
That would make a lot of sense.
But, if perhaps I'm not a smoker and I'm a consumer, or I use topical products and so forth. So how many pounds of cannabis does it take to produce the products that it takes a lot,
right.
2 and 3 ounces off of one plant, 5 ounces off of a plant indoors, depending if that's what you get. People, you can get more depending on the space, but you're not producing a lot of flower to make to make much product. So I think some of them started understanding that. Actually, I've spoken with some of the leaders in reference to this, and they're understanding it, and their thoughts now are maybe we should extend, the amount that you're allowed to have and so forth. So why not? The fear of that is, and I know what Todd's talking about, was the sub-bill for House Bill 86 that wanted to totally basically destroy issue 2. Now, that bill was dead the day it was introduced. So,
all right. So let's say this right now, Tim, I'm filling out my Christmas list, right? And I know that every single person, I'm hoping like I'm an opportunistic person. I'd like to recommend something that I would like to get. And I think we have a similar question from the audience. So if I want to put my Christmas list and I want to fill out each person, Dustin and Tim, exactly the ounce quantity I would like you to gift me of legal cannabis, I got to stay within the rules. I'm a rule follower, right? I'm a regulator. Mount up kind of guy. So on my Christmas list, how many ounces should I put? Are we still allowed to give 2.5 ounces? Is that still a thing? How's that working with growing some, giving some?
I don't believe it says anywhere in there. And again, this is one of the gray areas that you can actually gift product.
So meaning we technically can't gift, or because it doesn't say it?
It doesn't say you can. It doesn't say you can't. So that's one of the gray areas that legislation will have to cover. With appropriate language for that. It speaks of gifting 6 plants. It doesn't say identify what a plant is. So is a plant a clone? Is it a mother plant?
They'll define that though in the OAC of this thing, like they did in the medical. They define it. That will to be defined what is a plant.
Yes, eventually that will come to us. So that's some of the gray area we're in. But yeah, you can give, it's just as like if I'm gifting out 6 plants, can I gift 6 plants the next day or to somebody else that same day? Sure. If you're gifting them out, it doesn't say that you can only gift to one person for 365 days.
And what
You
about like the sale of seeds? Wendy brings up another question. Can you sell seeds? I know nationwide that it was restructured, changed that allowed
And
the
I've seen
sale
some
of
like
seeds.
farmers market things popping up where I feel like people are
Yes.
exchanging seeds or selling seeds.
Yes.
Like there's been some things happening right now in Ohio, Tim, that I'm like, is it legal? And I know we don't know yet and there more are going to happen. So what is the seed clone starter kit sales business like right now? And can we do it? Can't we do it?
Real brief, yeah, you can do it under federal law, under the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018. It does permit the sale of cannabis, hemp seeds, whatever you want to call them, for the mere fact that the sciences have proven that there's no active THC in that seed, even into a clone. The plant doesn't even, until it starts flowering, really start producing the THC. I'm not trying to go, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a doctor. So there's my disclaimer. But
everything else but though, sir. Everything else but.
Cannabigerol,
Dustin.
Yeah, CBG, cannabigerol is the creator of CBD and THC. So we know that federally, and our state Ohio is going along with that we're not trying to push the issue of making seeds illegal or anything because they don't have a THC amount in them yet. Same as, little clones, small plants that are growing. So until that THC starts to, I guess, they mature in that plant and so forth, that's when your problems would come in.
I'm curious about Senate Bill 9. What can you talk to us about that?
Senate Bill 9, 2023, if I got my dates right here, it was a two-part bill. It actually addressed the actually, we may have introduced that in 2022. But anyways, Senate Bill 9 had a two-part thing.
Dropping so many bills, he doesn't know which one's which anymore. I love it.
Yeah. I like to try to be accurate, but if I'm not, somebody please point it out to me and call me what you wish.
Oh, they will.
No problem. Oh, yeah.
No, they will.
Yeah, like I said, no problem. I've taken on the best. We'll do it again. But Senate Bill 9, the first part of the Senate Bill 9 was about current license holders in the medical program to have permission to expand their facilities, to produce more product, etc. And a few other things in there that they wanted to address. The second part of Senate Bill 9 was about patient protections and making the medical program better, such as reciprocity, getting rid of the doctor fee, or not getting rid of the doctor fee, but extending the doctor fee to once every 3 years instead of every year. It was also about unlimited conditions, allowing a doctor to be a doctor. And it also was about the reduction or the redaction of the patient card, which we've seen happen. And then there was a few other things in there as well.
Once every 3 years?
I love it.
That would be awesome, right? That would make, I would think,
especially with the zero fee on the card. Then now I'm just clicking two buttons, every now and then.
I think the industry would be salivating at the idea of having patients not have to renew for 3 years. Do you think everyone's excited about like this 3-year window besides the recommending doctor who charges $1,800 a year?
Yeah, well, that would be the only catch to this. Will the doctors remain ethical? Will they say, okay, it's $50 a year, so it's going to be 150, or are you just going to go for $50 every 3 years?
Yeah.
Oh, they're totes 3 year in you. They're signing you like a contract in the NFL. You know it. As soon as you said it, I'm like 1,000%. Fees are going to go up, but it's going to be a 3-year fee. Sneaky doctors.
Yeah. And I think that's still possible that we may see that this year. As much pressure that the legislators have been getting. The emails and the phone calls, and please keep doing it. 2.2 million of us voted for this. Let's send 2.2 million emails down to the State House and to the DCC, to get to. But that's what it's about. It's a good thing, seeing what we're seeing here with what's happening, and to see, as far as Dustin said with Senate Bill 9, there was a lot of good things in there. Unfortunately. I'll just say some license holders they didn't like the extension or the expansion part of it, but yet they turned around and financially supported issue 2, which promoted a 200,000 square foot expansion canopy space. Under the figures of Ohio right now, we have 2 million canopy, right around 2 million square feet of canopy space. We're only using like 500,000 square feet of that. And I'm sure we're using more now, but we haven't started selling in the mass amounts to the adults yet, so we'll see where that goes.
You mentioned that part. because that is actually part of a second email that came from the DCC. In fact, if you're watching us live right now, you have 10 minutes that you can still write a vitriol-filled, politely worded email to the DCC rules at com.ohio.gov or CSI public comments at governor.ohio.gov. 10 more minutes to comment on this, folks. Get it now. So that's one thing you mentioned here. And I want to talk about this real quick with you, Tim, if we have any license holders and such listening right now. So they're going to expand licenses in some areas. And so what they're going to do basically, is give some preferential treatment to current license holders, talk about expanding the license for a little bit, and then renew that on a biannual basis. But here's a couple things I want to highlight. I'm going to read through this, Tim, and then I want to get your comment and feedback on this. So a level 1 medical marijuana cultivator. Hey, great job. Thanks for being here, bro. We're going to give you 3 dispensary licenses per entity at locations. For you level 2s, appreciate you guys. 3,000 square feet or less, doing it right. 1 dispensary license. I'm like the count of cannabis right now. 1 dispensary license per entity at location designated. Hey, you dispensaries, we love what you've been doing for us. You've been selling that sweet product to our patients in there. So if you happen to not have any vertical integration, guess what? Going to give you 1 more dispensary, 1 more place to sell that cannabis. Couple of things here, Tim. First off, here's the big thing I see, talking about those 14 processors who got their fee reduced. Congrats to you. But guess what? You get no stake in this type of issue. And we are hearing, there may be people who are out there who are, there's going to be a flower issue. If you're a processor, you need your flower from someone else. So how do you get that flower if you don't have access to grow it? Do you think the omission of processors was accidental? Are those 14 processors going to fight back? What does this mean to our license holders? Just more, businesses, more business operations for them to have. What do you think about that right now?
This is a hot topic in the industry right now. You're exactly right. What you read there. Is it intentional? Yeah, I don't have a problem if, a CEO wants to call me and talk to me or whatever, but it's very apparent that those dollars behind issue 2, they're the ones that created the language for issue 2, and they were somehow or other, by participating in it, they were going to get their monies plus back. So
are we saying, Tim Johnson, that maybe shenanigans are afoot?
No, definitely shenanigans are afoot. It's even toward a monopolistic effort. It kind of appears here. The only thing that's saving from that would be the multiple standalone dispensaries that will be getting a dispensary license. But you're really gifted when you give these people a single dispensary in Ohio. You're gifting them probably a $7 to $10 million a year, income to that dispensary.
Who says that they actually have to keep it? I mean, couldn't they sell it in 3 years? Couldn't they? I mean, like you're gifting something where the average holder of a license across the country is like 1 to 3 years. So are we going to be seeing a lot more transitioning or selling those licenses to elsewhere, or
are they going to play that whole MSO game too, like the year moratorium, like that stuff? I know Ohio is all about Ohio businesses, but there's a lot of MSOs. There are some dispensaries that literally last week were a different name, and now this week they are a new name. I'm not going to name them, but you know who they are here in Marietta and Dayton and other cities like that. You know what I'm saying? They're switching names. Like they're literally, I was at a dispensary recently, Tim, that literally had a sheet over the name because they hadn't put the new sign up because they just got sold to some, MSO. So does this just lead to more MSOs? These people get more licenses and selling them besides those cool folks like a Bear River, like a Ratio, Southern Ohio Botanicals, those little independently local owned dispensaries doing their thing. There's a few more out there. Sapphire, shout out to you in Columbus. What about that area? Like are we just going to see more MSOs because these folks all got licenses and they're just going to be eBayed off to the highest bidder?
There's a potential for that. And I believe that from the original issuing of licenses in Ohio's medical program, I believe that over 60% of those have turned hands now. It's an opportunity for individuals that, may not be able to say have gotten into the program, or they got into it and they got one dispensary and now they're financially burdened. They get this other one and get it operational. Yeah, sure, they can sell it. There's nothing that says they can't. what we're going to look at here is on these new dispensaries is how they get licensed, which I'm assuming will be a hybrid license when you open up, because you're going to have to do a new build. And so the other thing that we need to look at, and I've submitted, input on this, is that in the medical program, you're only allowed to have, a license holder is only allowed to have 5 dispensaries. So I'm sure they'll have to adjust that language and adapt it so that it accommodates the 3. There is specific language, qualifying language for these, tier 1s and tier 2s and standalone dispensaries to be able to receive that gift of a dispensary. There's parameters that they have to apply by there. It's a common thing. And I know I read a national article just the other day, and this is what happens in states. You get an individual that really don't have the money to get in, but they have, they want an application and they run it for a year. They may have, $2 million in it, and they turn around and sell it for $10 million. 8 million, whatever it may be. It's an opportunity to say, okay, hey, I'm going to take my $8 million and go buy me an island somewhere or a lake house or whatever, and I'm good.
Right now, we know what's happening, by the way. We'll see Tim commits a crime. He's buying an island.
Exactly. So, we're going to see licenses flop. They're flopping all the time in Ohio. They're flopping clear, across the U.S. I don't think it'll be so much of MSOs versus new opportunists that are wanting to get in. They see this, go wild. An article I read the other day also, again, placed Ohio as the #1 cannabis consumption state in America. So that gives you an idea of what's available here once we actually go thing. But again, that's all going to boil down to.
And thinking about consumptions, I want to talk about my favorite thing, which is consumption lounges. I want to know where the heck I can blaze and why.
And like all these festivals that are happening, like there's all these things happening right now. I'm seeing there's a big one coming up at the Summit County Fairgrounds. There's going to be more. Everyone is popping up, shout out Johnny Cannabis and other folks putting out these festivals. Are people just smoking them if you got them there? Is that perfectly legal at some point? Are you going to get in trouble? Like, what's that going to be like at these festivals with products and smoking and consumption and all that?
No, you can't. At the facilities, and kudos to Johnny for putting this out. And he does have a disclaimer on his that you can't consume products here. You can't sell products here. That hasn't been established yet. Now, if it's on private property, I know he has an event coming up on 420. I forget, Kim Tam.
That's not too far from where I'm at. Yeah. Kim Tam, by the way, it had like a dirt pool. It was like a pool, but it had a dirt bottom, and it always creeped me out. I could never swim there because my toes would touch sand, and I don't like to touch sand or dirt on the bottom of a pool because I'm a fancy gentleman, Tim. So Kim Tam, great place. Creepy pool bottom. Not down.
Well, here's the thing with that event. That event's on private property, and there's no liquor license there. And the owner, to my understanding, and I can't think of his name right now or give him a shout out. He is a trustee for that local area, the township of it, but it's his private property. And if he wants to tell people you can consume here, you can consume here. So it is what it is with that right there. But the biggest thing about smoking in public, and they really haven't clarified, if I'm walking down the street, can I, just walk down the street and consume, such as a cigarette or a cigar. Their big concern is going into establishments that have a liquor license. So you can't, unfortunately, at this time, and Jim Canepa's made that clear, you can't, consume even on the outside patio where you're smoking tobacco. You can't consume cannabis because of the liquor license. And when you read the law, it's kind of ironic that the definition of a drug, alcohol applies to that definition more so than the drugs that they try to apply to it. But the way to get around that is if I want to open up a coffee shop, a tea shop or whatever, and I have an outdoor patio and I privately own that property. It's not a rental or anything, but it's my piece of property. I privately own it. And I want people to say, hey, you can sit out there on the patio after you get your coffee, your donut, whatever, and sit out there and consume. Have at it. There's no law violation there, unless they create one. And I don't see that happen. I see more. I actually know there is language that hasn't been introduced, but there is language at the State House right now to counter that smoking cannabis outside in a patio area where a liquor license is involved. But we'll be able to do that at the events. Unfortunately, like I said, unless it's private property and you give them permission, no liquor, then no, you can't do it. And I know there's some, the one coming up on the 23rd, Johnny's made sure that here in Circleville, made sure that, you can't consume and you can't sell.
But it's going to be tough. If you're looking at Summit County Fairgrounds, you're talking thousands of people. That's way bigger than a lot of these other spaces we've talked about. So it's going to be a huge event. And by the way, that event, shout out to you, company that's running it, is right around the time that adult use going to go legal, end of August 31st, September 1st.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be folks, like it's hard to stop if there's thousands of people there to be like, excuse me, you cannot smoke weed here. Please put your weed away. And let's be soups real. Those people are all popping vape pens and edibles. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's a few old school joint fellas out there, but a lot of it's going to be other forms of cannabis that's less detectable than the traditional smell of it. Right. So I would imagine, like, do you think, there's going to be like police presences at these events that's going to be like looking for
and how do they know it's not my CBD flower that I'm blazing?
Well, that's the other huge argument.
Like, how do you make the argument to start with? They're going to test everything that they seize and now spend X amount to test it. And it just seems like an uphill battle.
Yeah, exactly. And you touch on a very, I guess, tepid point there, Dustin, is what if I am smoking hemp? Why are our hemp farmers being stopped by the police and being searched because they're hemp farmers and smell like hemp? Smells the same as cannabis. So those kind of laws have to be adjusted. There's gray areas, and we are working on some of that language as well. But no, you're exactly right. Is at those events, the majority of them do have some kind of a security firm, or some of them may hire local police at special duty or something in hopes and so forth, and to respect such as, well, the event Lenny runs, he's got security there and so forth. It's more to maintain order. And the idea is not to go after a misdemeanor violation of somebody, consuming cannabis where they're not supposed to or whatever. The problems I think we'll have is such as the event at Summit County. They're promoting for everybody to, I think it's 3.5 ounces to bring in, and then to, make a $500 contribution, and you can be in the cannabis cup, whatever they're going to call it, that type of thing. Well, that exceeds your 2.5 ounces. They've also, made mention of, you can consume there and so forth. To my understanding, that organization, and kudos to what they're trying to do, but they were a Battle of the Bands organization, and they've seized on an opportunity, like a lot of companies. Canacon has even made an attempt coming here up in Cleveland, and some others that are coming into Ohio to, the money grab. Let's throw some events, make some money, and get out. The problem, I think, what's going to happen with those organizations is the Department of Cannabis Control, or Division of Cannabis Control, does have what's called agents. They are full-fledged law enforcement officers. They just, wear plain clothes and they look like anybody else. They will show up.
They're totally wearing like 1995 stoner gear. They got like tie-dye and flare. They got Dare shirts, and like they're like this. They're basically like the Steve Buscemi meme walking up. They're like, "Hey, stoners, y'all got any of them doobies?"
Well, their whole objective, I believe, they will walk around and they'll note violations. They'll go back. They'll make a report to the directors, of the control board, and what will probably happen, they'll
lots of weed smoked on site.
Yeah, they'll send letters to, products were sold or whatever. I don't see them taking action at the event. I see them sending that company a cease and desist. You're no longer allowed in Ohio to run any events. That's probably what will happen. And I hope that doesn't tarnish the reputation and the efforts that many of us have put forward in Ohio to get to where we're at right now. I mean, we're one of the most fortunate states in the country right now with full legalization. And, we're in the process of trying to create, we've got a law, now we're trying to create the rules. So it's kind of like, even the police, and I know there's a topic, are backing off. As I said, on, their dogs and so forth. But,
right. Well, I was going to say, speaking of, who's a little bummed out right now, Tim, with all this legal cannabis, who we really got to be thinking about right now? Those darn police dogs. They're being laid off. They're being sent to the dogs go to the glue factory. I don't know where dogs go.
Glue factory.
They're being retransitioned back into society. But thankfully, Tim, I poke, I jest, but it is funny. So there was a new bill. Some bills introduced recently. By the way, Washington Post giving a little Ohio coverage. Sean Brennan, a Democrat from Parma, and Representative Josh Williams from a Republican from Sylvania are kind of the lead sponsors on this bill. And I think you have a little familiarity with this as well, are working on creating a bill basically to help get these 300 little puppers that are out there sniffing the weed, and they got nothing to sniff right now. They need something to do. And so they're trying to get out there and help them out and transition them back into normal society where they don't got to smell weed all day long. I do jest, Tim, but you're going to see things like this. And I feel like this is I think it's a lighthearted argument, but there is some seriousness to it. But I think you're going to see some law enforcement, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, propaganda talking about like, well, we're being like, we can't hire any new officers because weed's legal. And those 6 guys, all they did was weed patrol all day long. Right. I feel like that propaganda is already out there a bit. This is part of that, but you can talk about the bill with the canines. And then to that point on law enforcement, like, how is that transition going with acceptance? What are you hearing with feet on the streets, so to speak?
Yeah, that is happening. And I got to give kudos to both Rep Brennan and Rep Williams. Rep Williams will actually be one of our keynote speakers on March 27th at the Ohio Cannabis Connection, I believe, that the Zuber Lawyer Group out of, they got an office here in Columbus and Cleveland.
Yeah.
Attorney Jim Ickes is
we would like to be on that too.
I've helped work on that a little bit with him and so forth, but Josh will be speaking there and he'll have some input for us possibly on that. I can't share all the details with you on where that's going, but I can say that this will mature into a bill, and what they're asking for is I wasn't mentioned in that article, but I was actually interviewed on that article and I gave my 2 cents on it.
Did you edit it out? Did you not make the final cut of this article, Tim? All right, hold on a second. Hey, Patrick, Bruce. We'll just be nice. Patrick and Bruce. You don't cut Tim Johnson out of any content, sir. You don't know who you're talking to. You're on notice. Good article, but you're on notice. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. But no, what's going to happen? There's got to be parameters. We just can't go out and replace every dog. A comfort dog, a bomb dog, a cadaver dog does not need to be replaced. The only dogs that need to be replaced, and I think this is where I provided quite a bit of input that the only dog you need to replace is a dog that's been trained for to smell cannabis. The other dogs, if you have a narco dog that's been trained for cocaine and heroin and those, but it's not been trained for cannabis, it's still a good dog. Mm-hmm. You still want that dog, so there's no reason that we have to replace every dog. That's impossible to happen. They're looking at those departments that currently have dogs. So you can't start, I think there's a cutoff timeline, if I had my way with it, anyways, with what I put in, was after a certain date, you couldn't start a canine unit real quick and then hope that this money would pay for it eventually. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. So, and it's not for new startups either, for that type of thing. So again, they're going just directly after those dogs that are cannabis trained to take them off the streets. I'm still puzzled, and I'm not trying to keep it there, but I'm still puzzled why. And this is where I say, well, evidently law enforcement from the street view has conceded to legalization of cannabis. Because I know from experience, finding cannabis in Ohio when people driving cars like finding chocolate in a candy store. It's just everywhere. It's there, but what hopefully will happen is these little 300 plus dogs, they'll be retrained. And I think we've set it at like $20,000 per, and that includes the dog and its training, because the dogs only run maybe 8 to 12 grand a piece. And then you got to go through the training. Officers don't need retrained either. They're going to be training with that unit, but they don't need to be trained. So we don't need to be training new officers coming in. We don't need to push out tax dollars for that.
That's a good point.
We need to just focus on that specific thing. And hopefully the dogs that are going to be taken out of service will either be sold for $1, which is typically what happens to their current handler.
They sell them for $1.
Yeah, they sell them for $1, or they'll repurpose.
I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to buy that dog, and every night he's going to be going ape shit at
me. He's going to be so mad at your house. We can't buy this dog. He's just going to be sitting there. He's going to be standing outside my basement stairs like.
He'll just be sitting there. He'll be on a permanent alert, so it'll just sit there the whole time. Yeah, but my suggestion is that we repurpose these dogs to let's take them over to Indiana, where they don't have legal cannabis yet, and they still need K9, cannabis.
Take dogs. That, Indiana. We're sending a whole squad of weed smelling dogs your way. You folks are never gonna screw you, Indiana. That's what Tim Johnson just said.
there's opportunities there. There, it's not to try to cause harm to the dogs or anything, And there is a purpose for certain dogs for law enforcement, I'm trying to find a lost child or a missing elderly or something like that, or cadavers, bomb dogs, and so forth like that. A felon on the flea or whatever. There are purposes for that tool. But we want to get the cannabis ones out of there now that we don't want them, pulling up on a traffic stop and I smell cannabis and, bring over a canine unit. And of course, the dog's going to smell it too. Now the car's getting ripped apart, it's getting impounded. You're getting charged with a bong and a half a joint or something, we want to stop that type of
weird copy to have. It's legal, Dustin. You bring
a lot of vehicle pursuits end up as a result of someone panics because they know they smell like cannabis. They just maybe smoked a joint, bowl, whatever. Law enforcement pulls up behind and they boogie. And as a result, we endanger the community. We endanger law enforcement. We endanger the person fleeing. So for over a misdemeanor issue most of the time. So I think those are things that law enforcement agrees with. When you do look at some of the stats now for officers, boots on the ground and so forth, they're in favor of legalization of cannabis no more as much as we are. They're tired of it. They're done with it. There's more exciting things and more thrills to go out there and do, for them. So I think collectively, and we just had a national law enforcement organization actually submitted to the DEA a thing on to get it, go ahead and get it rescheduled, get this done. So we're seeing some positive things there.
All right. We've been talking for about an hour, Tim, talking through a lot of great information. Thank you to everyone that's watched with us this live stream. Let's kind of end here, Tim, just kind of a repeat of what's next. I think that's as we kind of wrap up. We've talked through a lot of information, maybe some key dates that we kind of highlighted in the beginning of when are some things happening going up into that September kind of 7th deadline. Are we still on track for September 1 sales? So kind of key dates this summer. I know there's a lot of events, a lot of things happening. What should we as Ohioans expect or look forward to? And then kind of your final, when do you think it'll be on sale in the state of Ohio, Tim?
To kind of recap that real quick. Yeah. We have March 7th just came and passed, and that's when they were supposed to have started promulgating the rules, which they've done. June 7th coming up, the hybrid license goes out to all the licensees. It can go out before if they want to. That's just their deadline. And as I said again, and I don't keep Jim Canepa is doing a very good job of following that timeline. He's taken the law and he's making it a rule. There's been no legislative interference in it at this point. September 7th is the expected date for dispensaries to open their doors and say they're compliant with their POS systems, the tax bases and so forth for 21 and over to come in and purchase. So it's a good thing as far as we hear a lot of, DeWine says it's legal, but you can't buy it. Well, there's nowhere in that bill that says you can't buy it off the street. So there's nowhere in that bill that says you can't go to Michigan and buy it and come back. And now you're in Ohio and you got possession of 2.5 ounces.
Yeah, but that's technically federally illegal. So we got that one.
Going to Michigan and back. Yeah. But if you purchase off the illicit market from Jimmy on the corner or whoever you've been your connection forever,
my dude.
If you're purchasing, there's nothing that says that you couldn't. You still, and the illicit market right now is flourishing, and the prices have dropped dramatically, and people are enjoying that. It's basically the illicit market drives the legal market, and that's just the way it is. So, plus everybody's first round of 6 or 12 plants are budding well now, and I'm sure there's a lot of product coming out. So,
it is about that time, isn't it? We're about 90 days or so. I didn't think about that. We are probably hitting harvest time for you folks that when December 7th hit, that on December 8th at 12:01 a.m. we're setting up in a shack and putting those seeds in some soil, going to maybe clones. Seeds takes too long. You'd still be in the seed stage, the vegetation. So it's probably about that time for some sweet first run harvest from you home growers in Ohio. Shout out to you. Shout out to everyone. We appreciate you listening to this live stream edition of the Because Cannabis podcast. Thank you, Tim Johnson, once again, joining us. We appreciate you coming in, all the work that you are doing, not just with Cannabis Safety First and a great organization that you spearhead, but what you're doing, in Ohio's legislative floor, talking with these folks, making sure doggies don't die a sad death, all those things that you're doing down there. We appreciate everything you're doing, Tim. We appreciate you stopping by the show, talking with us, and helping us learn, helping our audience educate on what's going on in Ohio's legal cannabis industry. We'll surely have you back soon, right? Once we get another update, maybe in a couple of months as we push forward to that. But the real question on everyone's mind, Tim, before we wrap up, is where are you spending 420? You got to think this 420 is going to be off the chain, right?
Yeah, where are you spending 420? Well, let me give a shout out first to the 2.2 million voters that got this done. A shout out to, believe it or not, Division of Cannabis Control for following the timeline as they are. Be patient. It's happening. We got what we wanted. 420 parties. Of course, we've got Johnny Cannabis's party down in Circleville. We've got also one here in Columbus coming up that's maturing right now called Rub-a-Dub. A barbecue 420 celebration, a private facility, large on top of the roof area for consumption. There's other areas.
There will be an event going on at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, 10 a.m. till
I'm
noon.
not sure if they have anything going on that day or not. I know that Austin is participating on the 27th.
All right, we'll check out that one for sure.
Yeah,
but there's going to be a bunch of stuff happening, right? What's your Facebook group that you run? Because you always have a bunch of stuff going on in there. What's that?
I have Cannabis Safety First is a private group, but you can still request to get into it. And then there's also the Ohio, I think I call it Ohio Adult Choice Cannabis Community, and then the Ohio Cannabis Community. You can find typically any updates, events, and so forth that are on there. That are coming up and so forth, from now clear out the year. I mean, such as, Lenny Berry's event, the OCHBS, that comes in October. But for April 12th or April 20th, there are events all over Ohio that are popping off. Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton, Springfield, the Cannabis Museum down in Southeast Ohio, as they have one on 420 as well. I think I got that one posted. And I'm trying to think of some of them over. I know there's several of them over in the Cincinnati area, and then a couple of them up in the Cleveland area as well. So, and then Johnny will be at the Kim Tam, whatever park with his 420 event there. And that one's already starting to sell really big. So there's a lot going on. You just got to get on the pages and follow and see the events.
All right. Well, smoke them if you got them, everyone. We're almost an hour late, but we're just pretend we're on Central Standard Time, and it's 4:20 in Central Standard Time. So smoke it if you got it. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Because Cannabis podcast here, presented by Wayward Media. Thanks for Tim Johnson for joining us as well today. Thank you guys for listening, commenting. Please give us a subscription to the show. Help us out. And for everyone else, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.